To me, the movie theater is like a second home. The sights, the sounds, and the smells always welcome me in, especially when I go to a local independent theater. The movie isn't the only story you experience at the cinema. The theater itself has an incredible story of its own, and it all unfolds right here on the silver screen. Hello everyone, and welcome. My name is Chris McNicholas, and this is The Silver Screen, where we highlight independent movie theaters and theater organizations from across the Bay Area and go behind the scenes to learn about their fascinating history and their special role in the community. Now playing on the silver screen, the Niles Silent Film Museum and Edison Theater. Now, you may not know this, but the East Bay has some pretty big significance in film history, because at one point in time in the early 1910s, there was a film studio here, in Niles, a little town in Fremont. The western division of the silent film production company Essanay Studios was located in Niles, and some of the biggest silent film stars made films right here in the East Bay and in the Bay Area at large. Stars such as Bronco Billy Anderson and, of course, the one and only Charlie Chaplin. And you can learn all about the East Bay's fascinating silent film history at the Niles Essanay Silent Film Museum and Edison Theater, located at 37417 Niles Boulevard in Fremont. I had the honor of interviewing Michael Bonham, a man of many roles at the museum, from board member to tour guide to the museum's corresponding secretary. Needless to say, he knows his stuff, and he shared with me the museum's history, the significance of Niles and silent film, and how the museum gives back to the local community.
Okay, ready anytime.
All right, well, thank you so much again for doing this. I really appreciate it. We're just going to jump right into here. What do you consider to be the Niles Film Museum's main mission?
The main mission is for the preservation and the sharing of silent film. Because, we're into preserving history, and these films are historical documents. And for too long, they were just ignored or destroyed.
Yeah.
Because people thought, nobody's going to want to watch this stuff anymore. So we are into preserving history. And so those of us that work here, we're all into history.
For those that may not know, out of all the places in the Bay Area to have a silent film museum, why is Niles the place to have one?
Okay, mainly there was a movie studio here in Niles over 100 years ago.
Wow.
Co-owned by Bronco Billy Anderson, the movie's first cowboy star. The studio was originally established in Chicago in 1907, and then they established the West Coast branch here in Niles so they could film Bronco Billy's cowboy movies in Niles Canyon.
And that's just the way down here, right?
That's Highway 84.
Wow.
And so that's the reason why the studio is here, and that's the main reason why we're here. But we're not only just about the studio that was here. We are about all of silent film and the preservation, as I said, and the enjoyment of it.
What year did the Niles Film Museum open, and does it have any historical status of any kind?
We have been here since January of 2005. We opened up in January. We started showing silent movies every Saturday night in our Nickelodeon theater, and we've been doing it ever since, with the exception of a little bit of a break for the pandemic, but we're doing it now. So, like in January, we'll be celebrating 20 years.
Wow, already?
Already of showing.
Congratulations.
Yes, of doing silent film shows every Saturday night.
That's great. Does the Edison Theater have any historical significance?
I believe it was the second theater in Washington Township, if I remember correctly. As I said, it was established in 1913.
Wow.
This building was built, and it was a theater for the first 11 years. In 1924, they built a new and much larger theater right next door, and they moved the operation to there. That theater burned to the ground in 1959, unfortunately.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah.
So after 1924, the room that now holds our theater went through many incarnations until we rented it in 2005 and turned it back into a movie theater.
Was that building, was that built by Essanay when they first moved in?
No,
Was that as part of the
Essanay had
studio?
no. Essanay did not have any connection with this building.
Oh, okay.
This was just a neighborhood theater. Although we know that the Essanay personnel, including Charlie Chaplin, would come to see movies in this theater to see what the competition was doing.
That's crazy to think, Chaplin was in that same room
He
that
was.
people go in. That's crazy to think about.
Yeah.
And yeah, this leads in my next question here. The most famous silent film star on the planet, Charlie Chaplin, was here at one point in time.
Right.
And he's sort of like the unofficial mascot of Niles, in a way.
Oh, yes, you see him all over town.
Yeah, all over town. Pictures. There's a statue of him right in front of one of the bars down here. So how long did Chaplin stay in Niles? And
Well, let me give you the background here.
Okay.
Chaplin, right at the beginning of 1915, Chaplin was looking for a new studio to sign with. He'd been working for the Keystone studio down in Hollywood for about a year, but he was looking to make more money than they wanted to pay him, so he negotiated a contract with Bronco Billy that got him $1,250 a week.
Wow.
And a $10,000 signing bonus, which was an unheard of fortune.
Yeah.
So he didn't like what he saw here in Niles, though, at first. So he went back to Chicago and made his first film for Essanay at the Chicago Essanay studio. Then he came back out here to Niles, and he made 5 short films for Essanay here in Niles over the first 4 months of 1915. Mm-hmm. And his last one was one of his most iconic films, The Tramp, which is the film where he basically established the character that'd be known as the rest of his life, the Little Tramp.
That was the Tramp's debut? Or
Well, yes and no. He had developed the costume when he was still with Keystone.
Oh, okay.
But this is what really solidified the character.
Got it.
Was the movie made here. And it was also the first time where at the end of the film you see him kind of walking off into the sunset in his funny little walk and his cane.
Yes.
Which he did a few more times during his career, but he started that right here in Niles.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. There is a very large and fascinating collection of old film equipment and props that you have here. What is the oldest artifact you have in the museum, and do you have a personal favorite?
Oh, I would say one of the oldest artifacts we have is probably an Edison projector. Out in the front from about 1905 or something. And we have other, we have a lot. Oh, my favorite? A lot of people would say it's our Bell & Howell 2709 movie camera. It's 1920s vintage. And we used that to shoot our own silent movie.
Oh, really?
10 years ago, a new Bronco Billy film.
Wow.
Yes. Took a while, but we made it exactly the way Bronco Billy Anderson made his films here over 100 years ago. It's about a half hour long, black and white, silent intertitles. You can buy the DVD in our store.
And just to clear things up, the Edison Theater, is it named after the camera or Thomas Edison?
It was originally called the Edison Theater because I believe it was just kind of affiliated with the Edison movie studio.
Oh, okay.
They showed their films. It didn't keep that name for long. They went through a few other names before the theater just moved out to the new theater next door.
Okay, and Bronco Billy Anderson, is that like the pizza place down the street, Bronco Billy's?
Well, is that
a connection?
There's no connection, but that's where they got the name.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Now, originally, the actor's original name was Max Aronson. He got his start around 1903 in a movie called The Great Train Robbery.
Oh, yes, I've heard that one.
Filmed, produced by the Edison movie studio back in New Jersey. He then worked for a couple of other movie studios over the next few years, and he changed his name to Anderson because Aronson was a little too Jewish. He was Jewish. In fact, his grandfather was a cantor and everything. And there was prejudice back then.
Yeah.
So he figured Anderson was a better name for his career. And then he established Essanay with the other owner, whose name was George Spohr. So they called the studio Essanay for the initials of the two owners, Spohr and Anderson, S and A, and they made a word out of it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now we're going to shift the conversation more into the community aspect of the film museum. So how does the museum give back to the community of Niles and the greater East Bay?
Well, we provide entertainment, and we provide history. Again, the history of the community here. because, as I said, we have artifacts from Niles here, photographs, lots of photographs of Niles. Our historian David Keene has written a book about the history of the studio here in Niles, and he went around, collected a lot of photographs of old Niles. So we provide people here in Niles with the history of their community. And we're still hoping that people, whenever somebody comes here and says, well, I have family that goes way back in Niles. I said, well, do you have any Niles memorabilia? Because we're always interested in old Niles memorabilia, photographs or anything to do with old Niles. So we are providing a history of the community here. And also entertainment. People come here and watch old films, some filmed right here in Niles.
And you do weekly screenings?
Yes, we do. Every Saturday night.
Nice.
Yes.
Going more about the silent films here, what is the Niles Film Museum doing to preserve and celebrate these silent films?
Celebrating them is showing them every Saturday night. We do preserve them. We have a little vault here. We have a place off-site with refrigeration units to preserve a lot of our films because films deteriorate. Nitrate film, which was the original film stock, which we can't use because it's too flammable, that just deteriorates to dust eventually. But even safety film, acetate, is what we use. If it's not properly stored, it will get into what they call vinegar syndrome, because you can tell when a film is deteriorating because it starts to smell like vinegar.
Oh.
Yeah. So we are trying to preserve the film that we have.
Obviously, the museum and Edison Theater are very important to the community members of Niles and the Bay Area, but are there people from outside the Bay that come visit the museum, cinephiles, silent film enthusiasts?
Oh, yes. We have people, from all over the Bay Area. We have people from all over the country and over the world, because on every Saturday night, one of the first questions that we ask the audience is, who's come the farthest to be here tonight?
Oh.
And sometimes we have 3 or 4 foreign countries represented in our audiences because, it's a tourist area, so people come here just to see the area, and then they say, oh, this place, Or some people say, I've lived down the street for years, and I never knew this place was here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we're getting them in one by one, locals and people who visit here, as I said, from the Bay Area, from other areas of the country or the world.
Any famous people?
Not really. Oh. Not real fame. We've had relatives of famous people here. We've had W.C. Fields' grandson, Buster Keaton's nephew.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Kevin Brownlow, he is the #1 historian of silent film in the world. He lives in England. He's been here a few times.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So, but we're always happy to have the relatives of the silent stars here. The biggest silent film star we've had visit us here, she was a child star in the early 1920s. Her screen name was Baby Peggy. And for about 4 years in the early 1920s, she was as famous as Shirley Temple was in the 30s.
Wow.
Yes. Everybody knew who Baby Peggy was. And she lived over in Gustine, which is over in the valley off I-5. She passed away a few years ago at 101.
Wow.
So she would come over here and visit us every year, like for her birthday. So I would say that she was the biggest star to visit us. And I'm happy to say that she was a personal friend.
Oh, nice. That's very beautiful.
Yeah.
Where do you see the museum and Edison Theater in the next 5 years?
We see us continuing to preserve and show film. I also see us getting the rest of the money we need to complete the renovation of the building, because we own the property now.
Oh, nice.
It was left to us in a trust by the previous owner, which is very nice of her. But we have a lot of plans for the building, but everything needs to be replaced. The foundation needs to be replaced. We shouldn't really be on an old 111-year-old brick foundation this close to the Hayward Fault.
Oh, yeah.
That, plumbing, electrical, and other things we want to do to restore the building to its former glory. And so those are plans we have, but it all takes money. And so, we're working on it.
That's great. And yeah, you seem to have a lot of passion for this.
Oh, yes. I've been a fan of old films since I was a little kid. So finding this place was like coming home.
What you just heard was my interview with Michael Bonham, board member at the Niles Essanay Silent Film Museum and Edison Theater. I want to thank Michael so much for coming on the show and for sharing so much incredible Bay Area film history with all of us. Now, I know the Silver Screen is supposed to be about movie theaters, and this is more of a museum than a theater, but nonetheless, the Niles Film Museum is a very independent and very passionate organization that, just like with any other local movie theater, makes community outreach and the love for cinema the very heart of their mission. And that, more than anything else, is what I strive to showcase through this series. If you want to visit the museum and immerse yourself in a century's worth of Bay Area film history, and if you want to attend one of the museum's weekly silent film screenings every Saturday night, you can go to nilesfilmmuseum.org or follow the museum on Facebook at Niles Film Museum for more information. My name is Chris McNicholas, and be sure to tune in to the next episode of The Silver Screen to learn about the next movie theater coming soon. Thank you for listening.